Chapter 16. Nigga versus nigger. That's that crack music, nigga. That real black music, nigga. Kanye West. Crack music. Late registration. I grew up in the 1950s, the heart of the struggle for equality and humanity for blacks in America. My parents were activists in the movement. My whole family was involved. I was even arrested at the age of 6 for participating in a sit-in. Needless to say, the word nigger wasn't welcome in my home. In fact, we couldn't say it anywhere unless we wanted to be in serious trouble. My siblings and I never even thought about saying the word. It was just understood that this word, nigger, was offensive. It was right up there with shit and damn, which were off limits to us too. But I think nigger was probably worse in my parents' eyes. Nigger was associated with the slavery and Jim Crow, lynchings and disrespect. It was the word that was used to downgrade and destroy blacks. It was the tool to humiliate and separate. But even back then, when there was so much tension around race, when that word nigger had so much power, there were still places in the black community where it was used. On occasion, I heard the grown-ups use it affectionately. You my nigga if you don't get no bigger. And if you get any bigger, you'll be my bigger nigga, they'd say. So I guess from the beginning there was some conflict over its use. I do remember when it was used by blacks that it had a different intonation. The word was pronounced differently. It was nigga, not nigger. It took on different meanings depending on who was saying it and the intent behind it. You could say it affectionately, vehemently, or indifferently. That nigga's crazy might be used quite jovial, while I hate that nigga took on a different tone altogether. Nevertheless, because of the way I was brought up and because of its use historically, I came to abhor the term. I reached a point where I never used it and never wanted to hear it used. I thought it played right into the white man's hands. I felt obliged to hate the word nigger. It was a strong feeling. I had heard the word nigger personally from the mouths of the most southern of whites. I thought of the Ku Klux Klan when I heard it and the treacherous acts they committed. And then there were Emmett Till and so many others who took their dying breaths with that word floating over them. As the years went on, I grew to hate the word even more than I had as a teenager and young adult. It was personal. In the 90s, there was a push to remove the word nigger from the dictionary. I was the chair of the English department at Chicago State University at the time and was asked to speak before the Illinois state legislature, which was holding hearings on the matter. I was adamant as I spoke about the damaging effects of the word and its association with everything bad and foul. I spoke about how that word was only applied to blacks and was detrimental to our psychological health. That word, I believe, should have been taken out of the language, period. End of story. Ironically, having held that perspective about the word nigger almost all my life, today I am not bothered when black people use it, especially in the context in which I usually hear black people using it. I know how it was used historically and how white racists and some blacks still use it today. But being aware of our history and conscious that racism is still a huge problem in the world doesn't make me hate the word like I once did. Although I'm still not always comfortable personally using the word, when I do hear it used in an endearing way, I don't question the motive or the consciousness of the person using it. And when I hear it used in any negative context, it doesn't sting the way it once did. Now, don't get me wrong. I will never sanction white people or anybody other than blacks using the word. But when they do, it doesn't make me react the way it once did. It's like somebody calling my mother a bitch. I wouldn't like it, but I know that my mother's not a bitch, so it wouldn't bother me. They can say it all day, and it still would not make it true. So I don't give it any energy. I won't give the caller any power or credibility whatsoever. I know who my mother is, and I know who I am. Calling me a nigger will never make me one. When Michael Richards, the comic, used the word at the Laugh Factory back in 2006, I didn't like it, but it rolled off me like water off a duck's back. I understood and even applauded all of the controversy and outrage over what happened. But I believe that you choose your battles, and this wouldn't be one of mine. I am more concerned about what I think about me than what some comic thinks. When I step into the recording studio during one of Kanye's sets and hear nigga used repeatedly, when I hear my 90-year-old aunt say it, when I hear it in song lyrics or in the vernacular of so many black people, or when I hear ignorant racists using it supposedly to insult a black person, it garners from me no energy, no willingness to repel the word. I repel I prefer to repel the actual injustice in the world, and I leave the so called inward battle to those who still feel like I used to. What bothers me is not the word nigger, but the joblessness, the poor housing, the inferior schooling, and the low salaries for all who white racists might label nigger. For me, hating the word and insisting that it not be used in any context does little if we don't address the underlying issues. I have come to feel that what is damaging to our psychological health is not being called a nigger, but being treated with disrespect and disdain and being denied privileges and inalienable rights. Take away the word nigger and leave all the other atrocities in place, and everything remains the same. Now, I know that words are important and that they shape the way people think, but I also know that a word has no power except the power we give it. Blacks don't have to forever hold on to denotations or connotations of the word nigga given to us by white people. We have the power to define that word for ourselves, and many of our young people have experienced that power. At this point in my life, it's not so much about racist white people as it is about conscious black people. And for our young people to not only tolerate the word, but also use and embrace nigga does not in and of itself indicate a lack of consciousness. To me, to be conscious means knowing your power, your strength, even as it has to do with overthrowing the racist notions associated with the so called N word. Some blacks, and whites too, don't think that is possible, feasible, or advisable. I respect that position. It's just not mine anymore. Holding steadfast to that position, although it may be fine for others to, would signal a lack of consciousness on my part. Why? Because I believe that we can evolve from the definitions assigned to words to ourselves. I may never say anything like, "What's up, my nig?" or even, "Nigga, please." But I don't believe that it's true that those who do say it are necessarily unconscious and unaware of the historical use of the word. In fact, I have known people who are fully conscious, warriors even, who use nigga freely. Whether those in my generation ever embrace the word or not, ever stop pretending that they never use it, ever stop giving the power to it that I used to give to it, is their choice. Just like not being mad at the word or the blacks who use it is my choice. Another reason I am no longer bothered by the word nigga is that I don't feel the use of it is what robs black people of self-esteem. The little black children who indicated a strong preference for white dolls in Dr. Clark's 1950s doll test, and again when the test was repeated in 2007, surely did not suffer from self hate because they were all called nigger on a regular basis. Maybe they had never been called nigger to their faces at all. It was just the attitude behind the meaning of the word that was the culprit, not the word itself. So, admittedly, I am not offended any longer when I hear the word in the context of hip hop culture, and I sometimes even sing along when I hear songs like Gold Digger. I ain't saying she's a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke nigga. No doubt my immersion in hip hop culture is to some degree responsible for my change in attitude when it comes to the word nigga. But I hold my belief primarily because I strongly feel, as I said before, that the word in and of itself is not the root cause of racism in this country. It is simply a byproduct. The word is not the problem. People using the word with a certain intent, a certain disdain are the problem. As I head now into my late 50s, I have come full circle regarding a word I could scarcely bring myself to say just a couple of years ago, where I questioned whether or not a word like nigger could ever evolve to a term of endearment, and even felt strongly that it could not. I have witnessed that happening. Can a generation actually change the meaning or change the context to create a whole other experience? I wondered. For me, the answer is yes, because I have seen it happen. And in seeing it, I have shifted from a paradigm I thought I would hold steadfast to until death to one that has opened up a whole new way of me thinking about the word. Perhaps some of my colleagues and dearest friends would be all but outraged that I could possibly be questioning whether or not there is a context for the word that makes it palatable. After all, my own father was called nigger daily as he worked to make a living to support us. How in the world could I ever have anything but disdain for the word in any context? And yet, if I am honest, I must admit this shift in my thinking. I don't invite anyone to share in it unless they want to, and I have no interest in debating the issue. But for me, it's liberating to no longer be bound by a word. It frees me further to fight the real racism behind the word. I know firsthand that some of today's rappers, Shay Smith, aka Rhymefest, or Lonnie Rashid Lynn Jr., aka Common, for example, are fully conscious of who they are and are fully aware emotionally and academically of our history. Rhymefest and I have had deep conversations about Black people, our heritage, and our struggles since he and Kanye were teens. He, like Kanye, Common, Most Def, and some others who use the word nigga in their music, are clearly conscious and informed, and in no way taking anything away from the culture by using the word in his lyrics. Semantically and rhetorically, no other word would have quite the same bite, not by far, in fact. That I don't feel the urge to lecture all of the young people in the studio on the word being offensive and inappropriate lets me know that I have evolved, not regressed. Where I go to were I to go back to the slave dungeons in Ghana that I visited in 2002, I would feel no less connected, no less pain than I did before my position on the word nigger shifted. It was not what the slaves were called, but how they were treated that continues to upset me. I remain racially and politically conscious and even feel that perhaps the word nigger may ultimately undergo the same metamorphosis as did the word black. Admittedly, the analogy breaks down after a point. But when I was growing up in the 50s and was not allowed to use the word nigger, I was not allowed to use the word black either. That was just as bad as saying nigger. You old black thing was a phrase that I just might get a whipping for if I dared to say it. To be black back then was a bad thing. It was associated with evil, destruction, the worst of the worst. There was no way that you could be considered beautiful, no matter how keen your features, how good your hair, how shapely your body if your skin was black. But James Brown proclaimed, "Say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud." And the Black Power movement came into full bloom. And suddenly the word had another kind of power. We proudly referred to ourselves as black and regarded those using terms like colored or Negro to be all but barbaric. Black or blackie were words white people used to degrade people of African descent, just as they use the word nigger. The word black evolved. Now we've gone from fighting if we were called black to fighting if we aren't. Despite the negative associations linked to the word or color, it is still our description of choice. We rarely think about or take exception to the language being racist and the color black being associated with something bad today, even though it still has a negative connotation in many ways. The good guys still wear the white hats, the evil ones wear black. The good horse is the white horse, the bad one is black. The lie that's okay to tell is a little white lie. Black hole, blackmail, blackball are all negative. The angel food cake is white or light, while the devil's food cake is dark. There are other examples of how, over the years, the word black or anything dark has taken on a negative connotation. That in itself impacts a nation of people consciously and subconsciously. There was a point in our history that many were not only offended by the word black, but were offended to be black. More than a few cents were made from bleaching creams. The affluent underwent cosmetic surgery to alter not just flat noses and thick lips, but dark skin as well. We didn't want to be black, pure and simple. But the word evolved, and so did we, to another understanding and another way of perceiving it. Is it possible that any part of this is analogous to the word nigger? My exposure to hip hop culture and to those in it who I know are racially conscious has led me to raise questions I never imagined I would. It was difficult at first for me to even hear the word nigger in Kanye's music. Now it's no big deal. Now I even sing along. However, Black people may ultimately come to feel about the word nigger. For me, one thing is certain: it will never be appropriate for a white person to use the word what it has meant because of what it has meant historically. I realize that it is a double standard, but it is a necessary and an earned double standard. As far as I'm concerned, it's not one that I seek to justify. Some things are just family business. And for the collective Black family, I believe that using the word nigger is our prerogative alone. Should racism everywhere in the world, and especially in America, disappear so completely that not one trace of the impact of slavery and injustice against Blacks can be seen or felt at all, perhaps my stance on this would change. Of course, I nor any other Black person can stop any non Black person from saying nigger. I'm not the word police, but in expressing the shift in my position on the word nigger, I hasten to say that for me, it's a word reserved for Blacks only. Sometimes at his concerts, when Kanye is singing Gold Digger, he extends special privileges to the whites in the audience. White people, this is your only chance to say the word nigger and get away with it, he says. Take advantage of it. It's Kanye's way of saying he too feels that the word nigger should only be used by Blacks. Some whites do take advantage and sing the song right along with everybody else. Inwardly, I became slightly pissed off. There are many whites, however, who are silent on that word, and I respect and appreciate them for that. That hip hop has tried to reclaim the word nigger and bring new meaning to it doesn't mean that the word has changed completely and that there are no overtones when the word is used in certain contexts. Nevertheless, it is and always has been part of Black culture, and not only in negative ways. Just as we now look at ourselves as a people who were enslaved rather than a people who were slaves. There is a distinction to be made between niggers, we were called by whites, and the niggas we call ourselves. I'm not arguing for this change, but I see it coming. It's a word. Granted, in some contexts, still a volatile word, but again, words have no meaning in and of themselves. It is people who assign meaning. Kanye understands the historical context of the word nigger, and I'm certain that his peers do too. Perhaps to them, the idea is to transcend the feeling that created the word and not the word itself.